September 12th, 2019 Board of Education work session. We're glad you're here with us. It was a little slow. Told you I wasn't ready for this. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll begin the meeting as we do every time with a moment of silence. Thank you. Board members, item 3 is agenda review and approval.
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Mr. Unruh, that we approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved unanimously. Item 4 is general public comment. We have one public comment, and then, as we typically do, we will pause the meeting throughout several spaces to allow for anyone arriving late to make public comment as they would like to. Public comment tonight is Brian Calloway.
Matt, do Marty in Spanish?
I could do that, Mr. Calloway. Apologies. I read agendas very literally. Tonight, apologies, we have Martha Gensimer Ramirez, who will be our interpreter for tonight's meeting. Ms. Ramirez is at the Resource Center. She is available today to provide interpretation in Spanish to anyone who needs it.
Soy Marta Ramírez, estoy aquí para interpretarle en español los que necesitan intérprete. Gracias.
Martha, apologies. Mr. Calloway, apologies.
Problem. Good afternoon, board.
Good afternoon.
Hello again. Same podium. How about that? Yeah. I think y'all probably still have the same T12 lights up here too. So there's a lot of opportunities still for energy savings. I realize my name is Brian Calloway. I'm a member of the general public, former coordinator of energy and sustainability here at Durham Public Schools. My understanding is that position has still not been filled, that it's open and maybe never to be filled, I'm not sure. But Mr. Monk, I'd encourage you to take a look at opportunities to have a position that will pay for itself, multitudes on top of itself through energy savings and kind of helping develop a strategic plan with the capital side, because we have a tremendous amount of capital needs and opportunities here at the district. But I welcome you as well to Durham Public Schools. I was excited to hear about your hire. Boy, I guess as a emeritus member, I get unlimited time nowadays, huh? Yeah. But no, at any rate, I'll shave some time off of that myself. I just wanted to mainly mention to the board that y'all have an opportunity given to the General Assembly's elongated period to resolve a budget situation in Raleigh. My understanding is that the raises that you extended this past budget cycle are being kind of drawn on and paused for the moment. But just it's worth noting and letting the general public know too that y'all had passed some raises that gave many five-figure raises to executive level positions. The city has gone all the way to saying $15 an hour for their part-time workers, $15 an hour for their full-time workers at the city and the county. The state has a $15 minimum wage now for all their workers. Durham Public Schools is still lagging in all respects there. And if you review your April 11th board meeting where you heard from HR a report on the compensation study, some of the individuals who even helped create that study, it appears that they were giving themselves about a 20% raise, again, five-figure raises, while working class folks were told point blank that over 50% of the workforce is overpaid, is what that's what your HR department said. So I would encourage you to revisit that. You have an opportunity that those raises have not kicked in yet. Please take that up with administration, and hopefully express the will of the community, because I believe this community doesn't believe in that end being overcompensated as it appears they may be here at Durham Public Schools. So appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Calloway. Item 5, board work session minutes, August 8th.
Move approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Unruh, seconded by Ms. Umstead, that we approve the board work session minutes from August 8th. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item 6, Ms. Giovanni.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Mubanga. This item is presented for your information. As you all are aware, Durham Public Schools pays premiums for multiple insurance coverages. We did go through those this year. We did not bid them out. If you recall, Scott Denton retired in the fall of last year, and then I took it over. And so I wasn't comfortable going out and rebidding it since I wasn't familiar with everything that we had done. I will say that Mr. Denton has been very helpful. He's met with us in person. He's come in to try to help me to make sure that I'm more familiar, Tammy and I are more familiar with all of our coverages. And he has offered again to do that going forward this year. It was his recommendation that we bid it out this coming year, and Dr. Mubanga has also requested that we bid it out, so that will be our plan. But as of this year, you have in your materials the current premiums that we are paying. We did add an active shooter coverage. That's the only thing that's new. All the other coverages remain the same. And if you have any questions.
So, I'm sorry. So again, so the idea is that we're just moving this along and then next year go through a bidding process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you have any sense of how much of the increase is due to the active shooter coverage and how much is just,
The active shooter coverage was $3,000 for the year.
so it's basically not at all?
Correct. And generally, the coverages go out in the spring. So Scott left in the fall, so we really only had a few months. And he did meet with us and go over it. And it wouldn't have been really possible to get good bids from everyone with such a short turnaround, considering that, I just didn't have the knowledge of what we were doing. And just for the sake of bidding it, I didn't think that made any sense, and neither did he. But we did talk about it, and he met with us. We met for several hours, and he's indicated he's more than willing to come down if we have any questions when we start the bid process. He had multiple years of experience, and he's willing to share that with us. And hopefully he's watching, and I will be taking him up on that.
Okay, thanks.
So this was just for information. Okay.
So just to note for those that don't have the PowerPoint, and that we're looking at an increase of 73,000 over the previous year's expenditures. Of those, the active shooter is 3,000, so 70,000. The bulk of that is in increases in general liability and automobile, and property. Is that a good summary of the changes that were noted?
Yes.
I look forward to y'all continuing to work together. I know Mr. Denton did an excellent job and would be a great friend to our district, and bidding that out, I think, would be helpful just to see where the market is now going forward. Yeah.
I was just going to give him another shout out.
Yeah.
He honestly has been more than a friend. We'll call, he comes whenever he comes in. He'll come in if we ask him to even. He's been really wonderful.
So we'll take that up as soon as we finish this item. We'll invite you to the podium and try to hear more about that. Thank you. So on this item, I would add that although the discussion has been about 2 minutes, 1 minute has been spent on the active shooter item, and $3,000 of 1.2 million is what the insurance industry says active shooter risk is. And I will continue to beat the drum that active shooting is extremely rare, and I hope our district will continue to analyze our investments to protect our students in relationship to what we're seeing in this document, that we would invest millions in extra security versus what the actuaries say is possible, is something we need to consider as the fiduciaries of this board. All right, thank you. Just for information, any further discussion? All right. So would you mind joining us at the podium and sharing with us?
Thank you for having me.
So just 1 second. So if you could bring your mic down, and our board secretary has shared that there was some communication. General public comment is typically 3 minutes. If you'd like an additional couple of minutes, I think we have space in the agenda for that, but thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to North Durham, Eno Valley District's community concern. As a graduate of Durham Public Schools, Riverside High School 2004, I am proud to see Durham Public Schools' growth, commitment to its students, and overall equity that I find in the schools. However, there's one part of Durham Public Schools that demands change. Our community is concerned about one area. What started as a transfer for my son Jacob quickly over the last year became a nightmare. My son Jacob was diagnosed with autism. His base school is Eno Valley. He has HFA, which is amazing because he can communicate verbally. But in a classroom filled with 25 neurotypical students and a teacher who's not trained in teaching children with autism, he suffered his whole kindergarten year. I don't know if you can imagine a child sleeping for 365 days in class, but that's what he did. Every day, I watched my son cry and scream because he didn't want to go to school. Right over, less than a mile from our house, is Little River Elementary. They have an autism program. For the last 2 years, I've tried to get Jacob transferred to their autism program and failed because it's full. So I ask you, why am I trying so hard to get my son into a program that's full that he can't use? And not just my son. In my neighborhood alone, there's 6 children who have been diagnosed with autism, and their base school is Eno Valley. Teach and the Duke Center for Autism have both said many times there are a lot of children diagnosed with autism daily in Durham. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Teach will not see children over the age of 5 for a diagnosis. They're starting in infancy. Duke Center for Autism is booked 4 months out because they're on a wait list. Eno Valley has the community backing it. I polled our whole community. We are perfectly fine with having our taxes raised, our property values raised. We need this for Eno Valley. We need this in our community. When I was in Durham Public Schools, there was fairness. There was fairness amongst all of the schools, except for Hillside. Hillside was a bad school. Nobody wanted to go to that school. They have a STEM program. Now everyone wants to go to that school. It's not just about my son, but it's about all of the children that I meet every day who have autism, and their parents are freaking out because they have no idea what to do. Their base school is Eno Valley. My son's year would have been better outside of the IEP had a teacher who specialized and was trained in autism said, hey, that child's stimming right now. That child is stimming. His teachers, amazing as they were so patient with Jacob, but they didn't understand what he was doing and what he was going through. Simple things like the lights in the classroom being on made him cry the whole time until it was time to go outside and play, and Miss Melvin cut the lights off and he stopped. Simple things like that, teachers who are trained in AU understand and can acknowledge. And for the parents who don't have the luxury like I do to be able to just go and be at my son's school, the parents who are working 2 jobs, who come home and don't know whether or not their kid has autism, they have teachers and resources with this program that open doors that our community doesn't have. Little River's program is amazing. I went there, I spoke with the teachers, I spoke with the heads of the program. What they do for children with autism is beyond. But my son's kindergarten year, his foundation for a great school career was built on sand. Now he will forever have this feeling that school is not what it should be. And that's never what I wanted for any of my children. Why can't Eno Valley have this program? Why are the parents having to transfer their kids out all the way across town just to receive the same resources that other kids in other schools and other districts get? That's all.
Could you share your name with me again?
Yes, it's Michelle Kahn,
Spell the last name for me.
Cohn.
Okay. Can we have someone from administration follow up with you before you leave today to get your contact information?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We will have additional public comment in the near future. We're moving on to item 7, academic services. Dr. Hardy?
Good afternoon. We have a 2-part presentation this evening. We will start with Dr. Spencer, and then we will have, in addition to those exciting results, some exciting results regarding our strategic plan.
Good afternoon, evening, almost. Today I bring you our 2018-19 accountability report and the status of where we stand in the accountability model for North Carolina from the Every Student Succeeds Act. I am going to share kind of the data component, and then I will turn it over to Dr. Hardy to talk about the what are we doing about it, what brought about some of these results, so that we can see the big picture. So as we think about the Every Student Succeeds Act, today we want to provide a summary of the academic data for 2018-19, as we also will look at disaggregated data that will strategically focus our goals and benchmarks that are outlined in the strategic plan. The evidence is clear that DPS is on the move, as reflected in our school performance grade increases, EVOS growth increases, graduation increase, and strategic plan benchmark proficiency. So as we think about being on the move, Dr. Mabenga has articulated that DPS is on the move. We know that you were all present as we celebrated at Lakewood Elementary. What a fabulous day and celebration for that school. We also want to bring today to you the full picture of our school's performances in the state accountability system for our community. For our community, in today's agenda packet, we have included 3 data reports. There's an executive summary, a subgroup performance reports, and our race, ethnicity, and gender report. That is in the packet. It will also be on the district website. Additionally, the Department of Public Instruction website has additional detailed reports that may be helpful for those seeking additional information. As we think about ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, it's important to note that there are many details and many business rules that apply to all parts of the plan. This visual provides an overview that encompasses both the state requirements as well as the federal requirements, including this particular visual provides all of the assessments and indicators that are included in the accountability model. For the most part, the components have remained the same for this 2018-19 school year. There's one exception that I would like to highlight. This year we had a new Math 3 end of course test, although the data for all students is what is reported out in our public reporting documents. For accountability purposes, we should think of math as high school math, which for our high school students, it is either Math 1 if they take it in high school or Math 3 for those students who took Math 1 in middle school. This is new for our high schools this year, and the largest implication is that this is the first year that our high schools will have not received middle school banked Math 1 scores. And so when we get to the math data, I'll provide a little more information on that for you. When we think about school performance grades, they are required as a part of the accountability model. The school performance grade is a school designation of an A through F and is based on 80% grade level proficiency and 20% EVOS growth. This includes all of the components that were on the previous slide. Today, I'm not going to go item by item. I think we've come a long way in the last several years with this model, but certainly stop me if you have questions. Specifically, I'd like to highlight Eno Valley, Y.E. Smith, Brogdon, and Shepherd. They've all increased proficiency and growth, which moved them from an F to a D. Also, from a D to a C are Lucas, Githens, and Carrington. And from a C to a B would be Lakewood Middle, Rogers Herr, Watts Elementary, and Moorhead Montessori. A little bit of a Montessori movement from the C to B category. All in all, we're pleased to see that our number of A and B schools has increased, and specifically recognizing those A schools of City of Medicine Academy, Durham School of the Arts, Middle College, and J.D. Clement Early College. When we think about our overall proficiency composite, this is a historical lens showing our EOGs and EOCs. I will point out once again that there are little parts to it, such as that math, that provide not totally apples to apples comparison, but in general, the grade level proficiency includes those students' test scores who were at a 3, 4, or 5, while college and career ready are just those that scored level 4 and 5. We did see a 0.7 increase in our grade level proficiency, while our career college went down slightly. That is also a decrease that we've seen at the state level for career and college readiness. For reading, speaks for itself. We saw a small dip in the 5th grade. These scores do take into account our Take 2. You may remember our summer programming. Those do include our summer programming results as well. For math, I would point out that this was a new assessment. It was we set new cut scores. We've experienced this in the past. Typically, we see a dip in math. Or in scores when we go through that process. We did see a little bit of that at the elementary level, but as noted above, you can see some wonderful results at the middle school in terms of increases in our math. For math, 8th grade, you will note that this combines our 8th graders who took, it combines the Math 1 as well as the EOG. So that part was new last year. If you separated those, our EOG would have been 23%, while those in Math 1 was a 98.6%. Math 1 middle school students starting last school year, as in 17-18 school year, no longer took both tests. So that is new. That was a positive that started last year, and we're starting to feel some of the data results of that change with the bank score rule at the high school level. Science, once again, is a subject that we have shown continuous improvement year after year. This past year was no different, with increases that carry right over into your high school biology. I will point out, this is where you'll kind of look at your Math 1 and Math 3. It is not an apples-to-apples comparison for Math 1. So remember what I said, that this is the first year where we had no bank scores. So for example, in 2017-18, we had an additional, high schools received an additional 354 banked scores. So that's kind of the volume of that. It's not a good apples-to-apples comparison, but if we removed those bank scores from 2017-18, it would look like our proficiency was 35.2, meaning we would have, if you were trying to get to an apples-to-apples comparison, it's a 4.3 decrease instead of an 11.9 decrease, but we're applying that rule change.
Before you go, can you clarify banked
Yes.
scores? Those are our middle school students that are highly proficient in math and are taking them math early before the high
Correct.
school, right?
So up until the 17-18 school year, if I'm an 8th grade student, I would have taken Math 1 at the EOC, as well as I still had to take the 8th grade EOG. So that was the first year. Last year, I say last year, not 18-19, 17-18 last year, was the first year where students were not required to take both assessments. They took the one in which they were in the class. So that was a positive change at the state level in terms of rules. And for those of us who've been in schools, we've advocated for that for quite some time. So they gave I'm trying to get my school years right. The 17-18 school year, when they started that, they also allowed high schools to maintain receiving the bank score. So high schools, 9-12 high schools, have always been able to receive the middle school Math 1 score, and it went into their proficiency rate. And I was not around when that first started, but I have my thoughts of why it was done, but clearly they tried to create a more even playing field by saying for that group of students, we still need to measure your progress in high school, and so therefore we're going to measure it in Math 3. So new for the 18-19 year was Math 3. And so what's kind of interesting about this is that when the proficiency rates of Math 3 are reported, it is reported for all students, It is calculated in the accountability model for that group of students who had Math 1 in middle school. So there's some business rules that schools have to kind of think about. Our messaging has really been we really want all students in Math 3 to be excelling at a very high rate, whether they took it in Math 1 in middle school or in high school. So for Math 3, the expectation would be that those students the ones that have traditionally banked a score, now they're being held accountable at the Math 3 level, and to maintain their level of progress and to, we're used to those bank scores being at a very high rate of proficiency. And we are seeing that that same group had an 85.1. And so similarly, your bank score, it's not the same cohort, is generally around 97, 98%. So we know that we will continue to look at our Math 3 instruction to ensure that we are getting students where they need to be. I'm going to stay right here for just a second in case there's other questions. This is one of our newest pieces with the accountability model. We're good? All right. So one other newer piece, it was new to us last year. The English Learner Progress Indicator was new to North Carolina last year. However, the WIDA Access Assessment has been given for many years. This is a language proficiency test. It assesses speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And for this particular indicator, the state sets a target for each student individually based on their initial WIDA Access test score. And then a timeline is established for that student based on their initial score as far as when they should exit English learner status. The percentage of 39.4% is the percentage that reflects the number of students who met their target. I will say, by the very nature of design, the first year, if you miss your target, then you have more to catch up on the next year. So it's an assessment that is actually somewhat, it is individualized for where that student starts, but the trajectory does not change based on 1 year of performance. And so this is a particular assessment that we know we need to continue looking at and monitoring the data and working with our students and staff to understand how to address it. The state has already communicated to us that there's likely to be a review of this particular indicator and the target scores, because when they started, it was brand new. As a part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, every state has to have an indicator that addresses English learners.
Dr. Spencer, excuse me.
Yes.
With the reporting on this being aggregated, I understand that meeting that target score, like you said, is individualized because students are coming in very different levels of proficiency in reading. So my question is, once they meet their particular target level, what does that mean for that student as far as moving into other classwork at a better rate? I'm just trying to understand what the target means.
A great question. And so the status of English learner, of course, the students' services, English ESL services at the school are determined based off of the status of their language proficiency. So some students may be in regular classes and get some pullouts. Some may be in an ESL kind of study skills. Some might have more ESL classes than others, depending on their needs. And so when they exit, from a technical angle, I think that you would see many of those students are no longer in ESL classes per se. However, even when they exit, when we get to the next section on subgroup data, they are actually included in subgroup data when we get into the accountability model. So our schools are actually still accountable for those students, whether they are identified EL or exited, they're still accountable for the performance of those students. Does that make sense?
I have another question, Dr. Spencer, and we might not have the answer on the spot, but I'm assuming we are also tracking growth in this area, right? So the overall proficiency we know doesn't really help us when we have new students coming in, but we are tracking growth with students individually who are doing the English language learning.
Yes.
And I think the other point is this particular assessment has multiple domains, and so we're able to look at the domains also as we try to monitor individual student progress. And the area where we have the most opportunity in WIDA for most of our students that were not able to exit was in the area of speaking. So that's a place where our ESL department, Ms. Ryaseem and her team have been working with our principals as part of their intervention planning to make sure that we have specific strategies around phonological awareness, vocabulary, so that they can improve that speaking component, which we know for most of our students where there was that gap will help us in this particular area.
All right. So that's the big picture overall. And as we think about where we go in terms of improvement, we know that we begin to look at groups of students. When we begin disaggregating the data into subgroups, we begin seeing that there are positive increases in all of our subgroups. Although small steps, we know that this is the data that will ultimately direct our work in terms of getting to where we want to be. I would also say, and I've included in our packet and our discussion, a more historical view of looking at our groups of students. And I would just say, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we know that this is where our work is, that this gives you a historical look at the composite by race and ethnicity subgroups. We know that our Black, Hispanic populations, especially, we know that that is where our work is in terms of academic performance improvement. This is the work that will be guided by ultimately rooted in our work with equity, but also crossing into the instructional realm of what do we do. Similarly, I think this slide provides even greater information around looking at students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, limited English proficiency, that is ultimately where our gap is. This is where our work is, that when we talk about our strategic plan and we talk about district improvement, this is the core, this is at our core in terms of improvement areas. Also, although there are other college and career indicators in our accountability model, I think the one that we pay attention to the most is our cohort graduation rate. This gives you a historical look by subgroups. Overall, I'm pleased to say that our graduation rate increased from 81.5 to 82.9. And I'm confident that we're going to keep seeing growth in that, as that is something that the strategic plan very specifically identifies strategies and benchmarks for. So let's go a little deeper into the college and career readiness indicators. The executive summary that is in your packet actually also has it by school historically, so that you can see a little bit. You can see small schools, large schools as well. This particular slide shares with you the cohort graduation rate for multiple years, math course rigor, ACT WorkKeys, and the combination. So this is a particular business rule I just wanted to kind of highlight for you. When we talk about reporting the ACT by itself, it is usually speaking of the 11th graders who took it. So when it says 2018-19, that is a group of 11th graders who took that. When we look at ACT WorkKeys, that is a group of 12th graders who were also CTE completers who took the ACT WorkKeys assessment and scored a silver or above. When we look at ACT/ACT WorkKeys, which is a combo, I want you to think of that as an either or. So the denominator, the group of students we're looking at, are your 12th graders who passed either the ACT or the ACT WorkKeys. And that is a new business rule that was effective the 2017-18 school year. And so one of the things that you can kind of see, last year, our 11th graders, 2017-18, we saw an increase in ACT. And so that is what directly feeds your ACT WorkKeys, because it's 11th grade when you look at ACT by itself. When you look at ACT WorkKeys, that is your 12th grade group. So it's the same cohort, but they're actually going into the accountability model during the 12th grade year.
What does it mean to pass?
Pass the ACT is a 17 or above, which is the standard for our university system.
17 to get into
The floor.
Minimum
It's the
requirement.
floor.
that's the minimum requirement.
Minimum requirement. Minimum.
So, and that's what's declared passing.
So
And then the
Proficiency.
WorkKeys,
Silver or above. So silver, gold.
and what does that mean?
So that is, so ACT WorkKeys is an assessment that it is, although it is CTE completers, it is also very language oriented in terms of reading and writing and math. And so it is actually skills that are used in the workplace. So
And it's a test,
it's a test.
and it's one test
It's one test
that's given to every CTE completer
during
student.
their 12th grade year.
12th grade year.
when they're highly motivated.
It's not
Yeah.
specialized by content area?
It is not specialized by content area, and I will say,
Basically, it's a different version of the ACT, but given only to CTE students. Is that a rough summary?
yes, and it is a credential that is actually used in the workforce, in businesses. That is, many places you will find that hire, that is one of the assessments that they will actually give in terms of a hiring. So I think one of the intentions is to give students a credential on top of being a measurement, a high school measurement.
So in the sea of green and all the celebration of data, I don't like to zero in on the negativity, but that ACT falling concerns me on behalf of our students, because while that's a 17 is an incredibly low bar on a test that is required for every student that wants to go on to a four-year college. And so, and we know that those tests are biased to begin with. They are filled with implicit issues. So I wonder at strategies that we're looking forward to support our students who don't have access to test prep, which is what actually raises scores on those silly things. And I hate them more than anybody, so
So one of the things is the great benefit from Dr. Spencer's office is we have had the opportunity to start to unpack some of this data specific. We talked a little bit about our English language learner progress, and that has been the same case for our ACT and ACT WorkKeys. We've also had the opportunity, Dr. Davis, Dr. Mabinga, and myself also met with all of our high school principals. We know that not only in the area of Math 1, but also in the area of ACT and ACT WorkKeys, we have some opportunity. At the central service level, as we work with our principals on intervention planning, we've also asked them to help us in terms of making sure that we provide specific support. So each school is developing an ACT plan, but we're also providing support. So every student in the 11th grade is going to have access to an online portal. We're also going to be offering centralized professional development for and strategy sessions for students. Each high school gets 3 sessions. So schools will sign up for those sessions, so every student in the 11th grade will have access. In addition to that, we will have Saturday sessions that will be open to the district. If you remember last year, those Saturday sessions filled up quite quickly. You could see it on social media, and so we knew we needed to add more sessions. In addition to that, we have been working with Dr. Pack, and we've identified resources that students can also use and some professional learning opportunities for teachers in preparation for the ACT WorkKeys. So we are trying to make sure that we're putting those strategies in place so that we can support our teachers so that they have things and strategies they can integrate into their regular classroom instruction, but also make sure that we're supporting our students as they have to take these high-stakes assessments. And they often are, if they are not able to score, can be barriers to them having access to post-secondary education and careers. And we don't want any of those things to be barriers for the children of Durham Public Schools.
I think one other interesting part of the ACT data in unpacking it is that we have a large bubble of students that are sitting right at the 14, 15, 16. And so I think also it is just those extra steps to build students' confidence, build their awareness of the test itself, which, I think can be intimidating for any student to take. And so I think that our curriculum and instruction folks are definitely in tune to their role in terms of the instruction of how to help prepare students for this.
Our question, but wasn't it when do we do the ACT?
We normally when it snows.
Right,
it's normally February, March.
And wasn't it the last time we did this, it got snowed out and disrupted, is that right?
At least 2 out of the last 3 years, and I don't remember if it was last year's. I want to say our makeup day was the day, I think our first day, I don't remember.
I mean, I don't want to,
But it always.
I don't want to use it
Yes.
as an excuse, but sometimes as a teacher, you just know that disrupting that thing, the kids that are on the bubble often slide the wrong direction when it's all disrupted like that. So it's, we need to do better, but I also think we can overreact to one score sometimes when there are other factors that can affect those things.
And of course, that assessment is a 1 day, so ACT gives us the day, and weather, circumstances, all play into it for sure. Very, very good reminder of what happens. It normally does.
Dr. Spencer, I have one additional question about
Sure.
this. Do we also have the data to split out the percentage of students are in different score brackets? Like, I know 17 is the minimum, but truly, like, most of the UNC system schools, unless you're in a community college, 17 is not going to guarantee you admission to those places, even though the UNC system says that that is the minimum. So I'm wondering, too, how we also break that out. Because even at a bubble in a 15, 16, 17, that doesn't, it's not, makes you a competitive applicant for admission to many of those universities.
We do, and we actually, ACT actually provides a number of very helpful reports. I could go on and on. Like they have these questions at the beginning that really even speak to students and their learning and what works for them that are included both with the pre-ACT, which is at our 10th grade level, and then at our 11th grade level. And so our schools get individual reports, and then we get a district extensive report, and we can certainly share that.
Yeah, I'd love to see the bar graph that has number of students by scores. It's so easy to go from 1 to 36.
We can do that.
Thank you.
So let's shift to EVOS growth. One of the bright spots in our data is what we call EVOS growth. For those folks who are not as familiar with this, academic growth is an indication of the progress that students in the school make over a year. So it is supposed to be equivalent to a year's worth of instruction, and it is calculated through EVOS, which is a statistical tool used to measure student growth, and it's reported back to us through a growth index, which equates to a status of not meeting growth, or exceeding growth. For the 18-19 school year, I would you can see some historical information on this, but looking at it, 84% of our schools met or exceeded. I thought it was very interesting when the DPI issued their public release statement of the data. I believe it was their headline, which was 74% of schools in North Carolina meeting or exceeding. And so I'm very pleased to say that we were above the state in terms of the number of schools meeting or exceeding, and specifically the number of schools exceeding. So 48% exceeding, and you can kind of see the years of what that looks like as compared to 28% of schools at the state level. This data is important, and it reflects the hard work of our schools. When I work and talk with whether it's principals or teachers, kind of in understanding the accountability model, I think of proficiency, which is what we've been talking about, as how are our students doing, and growth as how are our adults doing. How are we moving forward with instructional time and the work that we using our resources, both human and resources in the schools, as well as working with families and partners. And so when we talk about closing the achievement gaps that exist, this is what has to happen. This has to be a part of that work. And as you'll hear in just a few minutes, it's a part of the strategic plan, because we know that schools have to be performing at this highest level.
So I'm sorry, just to get that again. So definition of meeting growth is, at least to the extent that EVOS actually is correct, is that a student grew by what you would expect a student to grow by in a year.
Yes.
So independent of, so it doesn't matter whether a student comes in super low or super high, you're still, what you're looking at is a year's progress.
Yes, and it is calculated using previous performance indicators. And so I think one of the kind of nuances of it is that there used to be a time where you knew a student's individual growth, and now they do it more in terms of students that are in a group similar with these characteristics. This is what is typical. So in the statistical model, it is not an individual student, check, they met it, no, they didn't, but it is more of groups of students.
So does that, so if Bettina's a high achieving student and I'm a low achieving student, both of which were true, then is the standard to meet growth have a higher expectation for Bettina than it does for me?
I would say that the answer is no, but it is more of the groups of students that are similar to Bettina's previous performance. This is what is this is what a typical year of growth is. And so.
And that might be higher than what students who are like me would
A
expect.
year of growth is like.
And so to meet growth, then, if I came in, my group came in not doing well, then to meet growth would actually be a lower standard of growth than it would be for students that are like Bettina. Is that right?
It could be, but it could be more. I mean, you know, it could go both ways.
This is the black box that
This
is the
is
SAS
complete- this is
algorithm
the-
and why they have a stranglehold on our
Right.
state government.
So,
It just, yeah, I mean, I think clearly, kind of the bottom line is, I want more schools to exceed growth than not. So,
Right.
you know, I don't want to tease this to death because it's very obscure.
Right.
But it's one of the many ways where I just think this stuff can drive you crazy trying to actually understand what it means.
Right. And I would say that our work with schools is that we need to push all students to where they are at grade level or above, and this piece will come because of the hard work that it takes to do that. There.
no, I just, you know, I struggle every time we report these school letter grades because I think they have no validity and should not be in existence in North Carolina. Let's just call it like it is. We shouldn't do that to schools, to students, to teachers. We do think that this growth data has more validity. We wish if we were going to use school letter grades that this was 80% of what families see. But we also struggle because, and I do, because I think it is a black box, that a proprietary product developed by SAS that no one knows whether it has any validity on measuring children and their academic progress. So it does feel like our community sees things that we don't even know whether that we're giving them good information, and we can do so much better in North Carolina. I don't know. Now you're going to the stuff I hate even more, Dr. Spencer. So let's just say that caveat that I don't believe in this low performing status of schools. I think it's incredibly vile that this is in place. But anyway.
Preemptory strike.
So as we think about our state accountability model, one piece of it is that schools are designated as low performing when they have the letter grade of a D or F, as well as not exceeding growth. And so I would say that this slide shares with you that we've made progress in decreasing the amount of those schools, and specifically a number of schools, 7 schools actually, that exited. I would also point out that 3 of these schools are schools that have, since the inception of the designation, have been. And so Lucas, Eastway, and Eno Valley will be in a totally new place as we walk into this school year in terms of that. And so as we, and I will also say that these schools have all had a chance to be honored and celebrated, and looking at their schools' communities as well, that has definitely been a part of what has happened over the last few weeks with our principals and sharing news. And it does go, to Natalie's point, it does go a long way for schools to not have that label. And so we're so happy that these schools have worked super hard to not be in that situation. So this is segue, unless there are any other questions related to data, to the very fun part, which is hearing, so what are we doing? How are we going to keep moving in a positive direction, and the trajectory that is set before us for this coming year.
Dr. Spencer, we had a great article written by North Carolina Policy Watch highlighting the work at Lakewood and the tremendous improvements there. Can you remind me if this list of low-performing schools makes those schools vulnerable to state takeover, and where we are with any of that legislation? Do you?
I think that the progress of all of our schools is, and the work that is happening in Durham Public Schools has certainly gotten the attention. I know Dr. Mabenga has shared with us that just the accolades at the state level and the recognition that we do not anticipate that is even on the radar. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hardy.
So we have a special presentation before I get started.
Durham Public Schools' 5-year comprehensive strategic plan ensures that all students, without exception, are supported in their journey through life and will prosper as adults. Durham Public Schools is driven by our community's core beliefs. We believe in equity, shared responsibility, high expectations, and a child-centered approach. In everything we do, if we hold to those 4 core beliefs, we will keep faith with our students and ignite their limitless potential. Our strategic plan has 5 priorities. Priority 1, increase academic achievement. Priority 2, provide a safe school environment that supports the whole child. Priority 3, attract and retain outstanding educators and staff. Priority 4, strengthen school, family, and community engagement. Priority 5, ensure fiscal and operational responsibility. We believe in doing whatever it takes to ensure that our young scholars and our proud progressive community have the schools we all deserve. Durham Public Schools embraces, educates, and empowers every student to innovate, serve, and lead. Working together, united by our strategic plan, we will do great things for the children of Durham, without exception. We are DPS.
Would love for us to just thank our Public Affairs Department, Truett, as well as Lucy. We are super excited and very proud of our strategic plan video. We think that that is a great minute to help explain the support that we have had from our board and from our community. And as we transition, this is, you all know I love to talk about the strategic plan. It just gets me super excited. And I think that this is a great opportunity tonight as we've had the opportunity to see some of the successes. And so tonight I'm going to do an overview of the strategic plan and our year 1 benchmarks and also provide some in-depth, some in-depth progress towards priority 1. Our strategic plan serves as a blueprint for the continuous improvement in our 5 priorities. And our community developed this comprehensive plan with ambitious goals. We want to be transparent with our community about our progress in year 1. You all know, I feel like I can hardly just contain my excitement. I'm just like ready to get to the slides, and I know they've already been online. Our core beliefs include equity, high expectation, shared responsibility, and a child-centered approach. We would like to thank our board for supporting our plan with sound policies and a budget that provided human and fiscal resources, our community for supporting and volunteering in our schools, our teachers, counselors, instructional assistants, and anyone who touched the life of our children this past year, providing social, emotional, and academic support. Our bus drivers who provided safe transportation for our children, our cafeteria staff who provided breakfast and lunch, our parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, caregivers who cared for our students and supported them. And most importantly, the over 33,000 children who worked hard every single day. Our collaborative plan has children at the center. And because of the shared responsibility of our community, staff, and students, we met our year 1 targets. So I will share with you through a template that we have by color. You will see green means that we met, blue means that we exceeded. For every priority, we have multiple goals. You will see the goal, the actual, and the met. So in priority 1, we have 4 goals. You will see, as Dr. Spencer talked about, for A and B, we exceeded our growth measure and met our proficiency measure. We exceeded our graduation rate. Our target was 82. We exceeded that 82.9. And for goal 1D, it was to establish a baseline. For priority 2, which focuses on providing a safe school environment and the whole child. We really focused on making sure that we had frameworks in our schools, 20 out of our 52 schools. So that's 38%, so our goal was 35, and reducing the students out of school time has been intentionality around making sure that we're providing supports for our students and reducing the percentage of students who are suspended out of school. At the end of 5 years, we want to be at 4% or lower. Our target was less than 7.4%, and we were at 6.44% for the previous year. Priority 3, to attract and retain outstanding educators and staff. We know the stability of what happens in the classroom is key, making sure that we are able to retain our teachers. So we were able to meet our reduction in our teacher turnover rate, which is 3A. Our actual was 17%. We also know, and this is something that we are committed to, not just because we believe in equity, but because we know it's really important, the adults that our children see. So how do we make sure that we are continuing to improve the educators that we have that identify as Hispanic or Latino? And so our goal is to get that to 10%. Our target last year was 2%. We've exceeded that goal by 4%, and we have worked to create a baseline and have the data that we need to implement an employee satisfaction survey, which is 3C. Priority 4, strengthen school, family, and community. We cannot do this alone, and we're so grateful to the Durham community that has been extraordinarily supportive of our children, our staff, and our teachers. We are within statistical range for goal 4A in terms of working with our staff in the teacher working conditions survey. We did establish a baseline to make sure that we are demonstrating an increase in parental involvement and identifying our schools that currently have a community partner so that we can continue to move that forward in year 2. And finally, the priority that ensures that everything else happens. You cannot do this without fiscal and operational responsibility. So in 5A, making sure that we continue to have a clean audit. We know how important that is, and we appreciate the leadership from our Chief Financial Officer. Making sure that we have established a baseline for our Clean School Award. Making sure in 5C, making sure that we have the adequate space that we need and the assessment for our elementary space for the K-3 class size legislation. Making sure that we have emergency response and crisis management. And then finally, making sure that we improve our transportation efficiency rating. Our goal for this past year was 90.8. We exceeded that at 92.2. We will continue to provide updates to our community at our board work sessions and meetings throughout the year. This just demonstrates for you the timeline for this particular year. So at our board meeting I want to say next month, it's already September, at the end of the month, Ms. Atkins will provide a priority 3 update. We know how important it is for us to really look at the picture of staffing at the beginning of the year. In October, we'll talk about priority 2, January priority 4, March priority 5, and then at the end of the year, we will do our goal summary. Next, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the strategies that are in place for this academic year with Priority 1. I'm not going to spend too much on the slides. We do have them. We want to make sure that the public is aware on the specific goals and strategies, more time on currently what's in place. Priority 1 is increase academic achievement, and there are 4 goals within Priority 1. Next, you will see the strategies that we have for 1A and B, which talk specifically about making sure that we're implementing resources, providing professional learning, using data to make sure that we achieve our goals, and making sure that we're providing intervention and support for our schools. I am going to spend some additional time here because I do think that it's important that we talk about what we have in place, what's in progress, and what some of our next steps are. We have implemented our curriculum materials in elementary math, specifically Eureka Math at our elementary school and Study Sync at our secondary school. If you think back to the previous presentation from Dr. Spencer, we do know that there are some opportunities, specifically in 3rd and 5th grade math, as well as in 5th grade reading. So one of our next steps, as you know, we'll be bringing towards the board in December and asking for support and adoption of elementary literacy resources. And we'll continue to engage our community so that there's a collaborative recommendation that we bring to the board. We are also working with our schools to make sure that they are developing academic intervention plans that are specifically aligned to the goals that they have identified in reading, math, and science. One of the proud points that we have is the equity professional learning that was provided to every single teacher during our launch this year, and our supplementary staff that really support our schools, our counselors, social workers, and nurses. They were in their own professional learning at the beginning of the year, so they will get that equity professional learning during our early release day that will be next week. So we will have a baseline so that we have consistent language around just beginning that equity work for each and every staff member that works with our students. We've redesigned our leadership meetings from feedback from our principals to really make sure that we are differentiating our support and provide not only support, but we're listening to their feedback. Finally, in terms of next steps, one of the things that you will see is Zello, which is a program that we're using from our Career and Technical Education Department, but for all of our students to make sure really paying attention to our four-year plans. We know that to make sure that we improve our graduation rate, we have to make sure children have a plan. When we get off that plan, that we have strategies that I'll talk about when we talk about Goal C, 1C, to intervene so that we can keep our students on cohort, and that when they leave, they have choices. And those are the choices that they deem are appropriate for their interests, whether it's post-secondary, where it's going to the work, whether it's going to the armed services. We want the children who graduate from Durham Public Schools to have all of the choices that they need to be successful citizens. Goal C is specifically around improving our graduation rate, and you can see the strategies are specific to making sure that we're identifying barriers, developing an early warning tracking system. Strategy 4, specific to the four-year plan, so using Zello, and making sure that we're increasing our CTE completers. We are really excited about the launch of our Skills Trade Academy at Southern School of Energy and Sustainability. As part of this, we have 20 students that are going through specific modules such as carpentry, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, an auxiliary unit where they learn how to operate heavy equipment like forklift drivers, as well as a professional skills module. We are really excited about the launch of this program. I had the opportunity to visit during our first week. We are also excited about the partnership with Dr. Spencer's office to disaggregate specifically our high school graduation rate data and to really start to identify students who are off cohort and make sure that we are providing professional learning to staff to address those barriers. I talked a little bit about professional learning at the beginning of the year. Our counselors spent a full day really looking at how do we analyze schedules, what are the barriers that our students have, and how do we make sure that we remove those barriers so our students have access to rigorous academic programming, honors, and AP courses. We're providing additional steps in terms of credit recovery. We will not only be doing that during the summer, but if you remember, we did launch an evening academy last spring. We're starting that at the beginning of the year. It actually will begin next Monday. We have 2 sites in the fall, Northern and Jordan, and principals and counselors are currently submitting student applications. As part of Evening Academy, our students will have access to teachers as well as to Edmentum, which is our online support. Students can have credit recovery as well as first-time credit. We want to make sure that we get as many students back on cohort as possible so that we can continue to improve our graduation rate. Yes, sir.
What does transportation look like for Evening Academy?
So that is an area where we're working with. Many of our students have been able to provide transportation, and when we have seen that's a barrier, we have been trying to make sure that we work to provide that. Our last goal is Goal 1D, which is specifically around using technology as a tool to accelerate and personalize student learning. This past year, we worked with our schools to make sure that teachers and staff had the ability to self-assess their ability to use technology. And so one of the things that we know is that many of us are on different levels. I think about it even when you think about using your smartphone. Some of us are able to use it very, very well, and some of us wish we were still using a flip phone. We wanted to make sure that our teachers had the opportunity and staff to assess where they felt comfortable, and then let us know what was the modality in which they wanted to learn. We've standardized all of our technology devices for teachers and leaders with our partnership with instructional technology and information technology. And we continue to make sure that we work with our teachers on the digital learning competencies. We're continuing to increase our professional learning opportunities so that there are paced technology modules. So teachers may access these on-demand modules in the comfort of their school or in the comfort of home. So we have synchronous and asynchronous professional learning through using Zoom, which will allow teachers to continue to develop those modalities. I would like to take the opportunity to thank and to recognize the partner that I have in leading Priority 1, Dr. Stacy Stewart, our Assistant Superintendent for School Transformation. And I would also like to take the opportunity to recognize many of the goal leads and team members. Many of them are actually delivering professional development or attending an event tonight, so they are unable to be here. At the beginning of this presentation, I thanked our staff, and I think all of our priorities are about the community, but especially Priority 1. None of this work is possible without the support of our board, our community, our exceptional teachers and staff, all of our support staff that make sure our students have what they need, and our parents, communities, and caregivers. They are really the ones that have contributed to the success, and we are super proud of the work that they have done to ensure that not only were we able to meet our strategic plan goals in year one, but we were able to improve the academic outcomes for our students, which we know will lead to more opportunities for them when we graduate. And at this time, I could take the whole meeting, but I have to share with Mr. Monk, and so I'm going to pause at this time for questions.
I'd like to also thank the staff that's working on this as well. I have one question on Priority 1C, Strategy 4. It's the only one I have deep concerns about, only because I don't know how it's going to be actually implemented. I know that having worked in a high school, how this is the one where you're saying you're going to use Zello to look at the 4-year plans. I know that our guidance counselors are overloaded. I know that the homeroom situation is inconsistent. You know, I would have a homeroom advisor. I wouldn't see him again until report card time. I didn't get to know those kids. So I'm just wondering who in the building owns each student's 4-year plan. I mean, I understand that that's technology, but someone in the building, if this is going to be a strategy for us, somebody in each building has got to own Xavier's 4-year plan. I'm just wondering how that looks, or are we not yet at a place you can tell me?
I'm glad you raised that, and I think those are some of the challenges as we've been working with our school counselors and principals. And we are approaching this very similarly to how we're approaching our 3-2-1 initiative with CTE, really trying to focus right now on our 9th grade cohort and starting there. It's overwhelming when you think about DSA or Jordan, where I'm pushing 2,000 students. How am I initially in that first year going to manage that? Our counselors do a fantastic job when it comes to scheduling, to making sure each student does have the opportunity to meet with the counselor around scheduling. We want to make sure that this tool provides that support and the resource from Power School. So it is, technology can be a great solution so that we're not shuffling papers. And the good thing is that Nikia's plan can follow Nikia through Zello. If I start at Hillside and then my junior year I am at Jordan in Project Lead the Way. And so this is our first year using Zello, so we're doing some professional development with our career development coordinators, our CTE teachers, our counselors, as well as our principals, also as we launch our 3-2-1 initiative. And more to come, because we know that as we implement this, that we're going to have to be agile and as we deal with the challenges.
Just as you're on the Zello software, if you can double check, I think the Zello software might be spelled with an X and might have a typo in our presentation, because the Zello with a Z seems to be a walkie-talkie app, and the Zello with an X is a CTA software. Both probably pronounced the same.
Walkie-talkies is an appropriate technology.
That would be good as well.
It is an X. I apologize.
Board, any further discussion?
I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by all of this. And, we spent some time last week celebrating, but, I just think it's worth noting again that every step forward means children who are able to do things that they would not have been able to do before. And I just want to kind of recognize the work that our administration has done, that the teachers and school staff are doing to move this forward. You know, we can look at all these different strategies and just get overwhelmed. And I know it only gets harder. You know, that we made this step, and then next year we're actually playing up at another level to meet the standards. So I just want to stop and say thank you to the administration. I'm sure all of our school staff are listening to this right now. But to recognize the work that's taken to do this, and again, to kind of center it on, these are children, and each of these steps means children who are able to move forward in ways that they weren't before. So thank you.
Can I just add one thought on that, which is that when we look at numbers, so being kind of the number person, and I think Dr. Mabenga has done it very well in talking, especially with our school leaders, which is that our numbers also represent our children and where they are. And so when we get into the numbers, that it is important for us to remember that ultimately it's about the students.
I loved, echo that praise for every student and family and teacher, counselor, school staff member, all the different educators, who includes our operations team, right? Who did the work to make sure that we can get here. This is exciting, and I am excited to see that we're making progress, period. I also can't help but not look at some of the places where we have lots of opportunities for growth. And I think about our Black students who still aren't achieving at the same rate of our other students. And I hope that as we are breaking down by school and looking at different grades, that a lot of these choice and differentiation sessions are allowing for schools to be sharing thoughts and ideas. And I know that our community is bought in. So what ways can our community help support us in these areas? Because as a majority minority district, we know that we need these students to grow. So I am excited. I am also excited about the opportunities that we have and the strategies that we'll put in place for those particular groups of students.
So I just wanted to extend the thanks that others have said to the team of folks that have been working on this, but really to the school level students and teachers doing the work every day. I can't come to priority one about academic achievement and not wish we had a goal that codified our expansion of pre-K in this community and our shared desire to do that. I think it is the most evidence-based strategy we have. I don't know how we keep this living document kind of continuing to evolve and change as we go forward. And I know it's going to come into this conversation that Mr. Monk's going to bring, because I think that alone is the best investment this community can make in our children as we try to reach at the very earliest ages to close that gap and to do some of that equity work. So I just hope that we can continue to have conversations about really codifying that in our plan and in our will in this community. But thank you all for the work that y'all are leading.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Just want to say thank you to board members for your support throughout the year. We're not going to be able to make this kind of progress without your support. At the same time, I want to take this opportunity to thank all our students, our teachers, our staff, and our community in general, because living in Durham, we have a lot of 501c organizations, nonprofit organizations. I don't want to name any of them, that they have been a part of this work as well. So kudos to all of them. So as we're celebrating our progress, and I just wanted us to know that we are very reflective of what adjustments that need to be made so that we can get to our ultimate goal. In that spirit, as we are reflecting, we know we have a lot of work. As we look at some of the area for opportunities, that's why from this time moving forward, probably till November, that's when we're going to start identify some of the priorities for our budget next year. Definitely one area, if you ask me what I'm really concerned, when we're looking at 2023, I'll say graduation rate to get to 90%. That's a lot of work. So with that, as we're talking about guidance counselors and all that, so that's where my request or my proposal to you, looking at November, December, when we're going to start talking about budget, that's where we really need to spend our efforts. How can we address this data as we're projecting for next year and 2023 before our strategic plan? But my 2 cents, I'm really pleased of the progress that we've made, and there are more progress that we can make again. Thank you to our community at large, being there, supporting us in different ways, tutoring those students, mentoring those students, all that they have been done, they've been doing. So we are very appreciative of that.
And I just wanted to add, of course, the thank yous to everyone from, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, all the way to, custodians, teachers, administration, but, and students, of course. But I've said this before, previously, the strategic plan, I think what we're seeing here, when we come in here each month after month, when we hear reports, we hear where it's targeting in the strategic plan. And I want to express how important that is. And like I said, I've spoke about this before. Even our harshest critics know about the strategic plan, right? Even though, critics are important. I'm not saying they're not, but they know about it. And this video that you guys showed is just going to expand that more. And the more and more we do that, I think the more and more we get our community to buy in and to look at the strategic plan and find out where they can help, what place in DPS can I make my impact? Like you said, there's a lot of nonprofits around here. Everybody has the solution, for education. But in fact, everyone has a solution that could fit somewhere in our strategic plan to make a difference. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again, I absolutely enjoy the straight lines that are drawn each month, each meeting, from the initiative that we're doing directly to something in the strategic plan. Because when everybody's facing the same direction, we're moving forward. And I think that's something we've longed for a long time, and we're seeing those benefits, now. Everybody's moving the same direction. Everybody's drawing lines from here to there. All of the contracts, all of the vendors, when they come with their proposals, what is it that they're affecting? And now we can start to approach our community saying, where in the strategic plan do you want to fit? Let's see how we can get you there. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of things you can do there. So I just want to, shout out to the committee that created the strategic plan, the administration for upholding it, continuing to draw lines to it, to the teachers, to the students, to everyone who is committed to the strategic plan. I think, obviously there's a lot of factors, but I think that is one of our major factors on why we're starting to see these benefits and its growth.
And to wrap up the Thanksgiving with something less profound, I just want to point out to the administration that including what you did in the packet from pages 55 until the operational piece where we have subgroup data, that's a level of transparency that this community needs and expects. And I guarantee you I will send dozens of emails over the next 12 months that refer back to this packet. So thank you for doing that without having to be asked. I really appreciate that. Any more discussion? Academics, thank you. We'll pause briefly. If anyone came into the meeting after the sign-in sheets were taken up and would like to make public comment, we'll make space for that now. Pardon? Any item remaining or any reason at all? The podium is yours. Please join us.
Good evening, board members. I guess for the record, my name is Antonio Jones. And I too want to congratulate staff, community, teachers, students, and parents. As a member of the strategic plan, that's actually not what I'm up here to talk about, but as a member of the strategic planning committee, it feels good when the data came out. And I want to thank Dr. Spencer for giving me my personal copy at the Lakewood celebration, because I figured she probably figured I was going to ask for it. But at any rate, I'm here to talk about something else. I want to talk to you just kind of taking a proactive approach. As we know, we have a proposed $95 million housing bond, and that has some implications for our students. And particularly, the Liberty Street apartments will be demolished as a part of that bond, which sits about 2 blocks over from Eastway Elementary. So as we talk about the capacity planning, which is item 8B, I think it might be wise to take that into consideration, the impact of a housing community being completely demolished. According to the city documents, that project will take about 3 years to complete. So what does that look like for student allotment and student budgets for Eastway? And what does it look like for student enrollment at Eastway? Where do those students go? Do they qualify for homelessness services? Are we now busing 100, 200 kids across the county to come back to Eastway, which is going to impact that transportation efficiency rating, right? Also, to my knowledge, unless something has changed within the last, I guess, 7 to 10 days, and I've asked this in many community meetings I've been in, I don't think that Durham Housing Authority, the City of Durham, or Durham Public Schools has had a specific conversation regarding the impact of Liberty Street apartments being demolished, and what does that look like for our students. So if we can take a proactive approach, because according to the document, that should start in 2020, which is around the block, around the corner. Also, what does that look like for the residential notice? Are we informing residents a year out, 6 months out, 90 days out, 30 days out? And what does that look like? If the construction season starts as normal, that makes it right after Christmas, right before testing, before bulldozers start to show up. And I think that's going to have a traumatic impact to some of our students to be relocated from a place that they always know is home. Now, for the rest of our students, we talked about the skilled trades program at Southern. This total bond is about $420 million, so it's more than 95. I think it'll be wise for us to figure out how do we get our kids from the skilled trades program at Southern High School to be involved in some of this construction that's going to be going on in Durham. I don't know what that looks like for summer jobs or maybe even after school jobs, but it's going to be a lot of construction going on in downtown Durham if this bond passes. So I think it's wise for us to take a proactive approach to figure out how do we, one, minimize displacement for our students, and how do we get our high school students jobs after they get these very nice certificates. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. Next up, you're going to ask for money from the county for the schools. Be big and bold in our requests. It'll be figured out for $160 million and $95 million. Durham Public Schools, please be bold in your requests. Thank you.
Thank you for that encouragement. Point of privilege from Mr. Lee.
Yes, please. Thank you. I've decided to do this during the secondary public comment. All right, so yesterday, Durham Public Schools hosted the District 3 meeting for the North Carolina School Boards Association at Lucas Middle School. And it was fabulous. I mean, there was everyone who came, from all of the different counties. Man, they were so impressed with our school system, with our school, with the presentation, with the organization of it, the gift bags. They're still talking about gift bags. I've gotten a couple of emails and calls today about these gift bags. And the thing I kept hearing on the way out was, you guys showed out. Showed out. And so I think it's very important just to take a moment to put it on the record, camera, video, whatever, and just give a thank you for the people who made it happen, who organized it, who planned it, who, I remember that one of the first calls, they were saying, you guys are going to have Lucas clean from top to bottom, you know, for this. I remember, I think I was in Sandra's office when she made that call. And I was like, for what? She was like, the District 3. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. So they were working just out of this world. And I have a few things a few people and a few schools that I wanted to thank. First of all, I thank Lucas Middle School for allowing us to host it there. It's a beautiful school. Everyone was very impressed. They were walking around and saying, is this a middle school or a high school? This is just beautiful. Then we had food, the Northern Culinary group department provided the food, and it was great. It was absolutely great, and they picked some of the stuff from the Hub Farm. They used it in the dish. That, you know, obviously it was all the students. They actually got a standing ovation, you know, for their work. Rogers Her, one of the art teachers, the art teacher from Rogers Her had her students create. They had a question about how do you memorialize 9/11, the events of 9/11, 2001, in an art project. And those art projects were the centerpieces to our tables. And they were very well done. I mean, they were great. And so we provided them with a certificate, but it was just great. It was wonderful. Hillside, we had a student from Hillside come do spoken word. We have the Riverside Chorus come to sing, and then the DSA string ensemble played while we were getting our food. And also, I talked about the oh yeah. But as DSA's string chorus played America, what was it? America the Beautiful. You know, we were reflecting on the centerpieces about 9/11, and then Southern High School's drum line played as everyone was coming into the building. It was spectacular. I'm telling you guys, it was wonderful. And so, obviously, the organization of it is really it's clearly a lot of work went into it. So I just wanted to shout out the DPS administrative assistants that, you know, organized this and pulled this off without any problems here. And I'm just gonna say, before I say their names, everything was great except whoever was hosting it. That dude, he was kind of whack. I don't know where they got him from, you know.
That's a good guess based on the description.
He just kept coming up there and had this weird red coat on. I don't know what was going on. It was me, by the way. But all right. So Alfreda Gentry, Lois Murphy. Please correct me if I say one of these names wrong, please, because I want to get it right here. Denise Johnson Moore, Emily Pumasancho, Valerie Brown, Tamara McKellar, Wanda Carrington, Judy Thomas, Sylvia Rogers, and of course, Sandra White. Right, so thank you all. Did I miss anybody? Everybody. All right, so I just I want that in the minutes. I want them to be memorialized because it was such a great event, and I wanted to take just a moment to give my thanks and the thanks from the board about the amount of work that you all put in and how great the actual event was. So thank you. Oh yeah, and IT and the sound, audio, video, you guys, everything was great. There was not a problem at all. You know, again, except that dude that was hosting it. I don't know what was him. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I also want to lift up Travis Anderson and the maintenance crew for the work that they did at Lucas as well. So, all right, so some more good news. We have some land to purchase tonight. But before we do, I want to give you an update on how we got here. We've completed the 120-day due diligence period. As included in the executive summary is an outline from our consultant, our due diligence consultant. He lays out clearly the different steps that they went through, if you want to read that. But the results, as they stand now, we've completed environmental, soil subsurface, title search, atlas survey, and appraisals are all suitable. And we're continuing on with our traffic impact analysis. Both of the properties together, the offer that we're making is $553,000, below the appraised value. So there's savings there. And the good news is now we can start with design. And the schedule that we're projecting now would have design completing around February of 2021. We will move into bidding the project with the construction phase beginning in May of 2021 and completing construction in June 23. And so we'll have a move-in period in July, and then our students will walk into a brand-new Northern that does not leak on August in 2023. So staff's recommendation for the board today is to authorize purchase of both sites and grant the board chair and superintendent authority to execute any and all documents required to purchase the sites. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. The total, so for the 19-acre property, the offer will be $716,690, and for the 57-acre property, it'll be $2,565,000.
That was under.
Correct. So the offer for the 19-acre property is $283,310 under appraised value, and for the 57-acre property is $135,000 under appraised value.
I will happily move that we authorize the superintendent and the chair to sign these purchase agreements. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, second.
Been moved by Mr. Unruh, seconded by Mr. Cason, that we authorize the superintendent to sign the purchase for the new Northern High School. Any further discussion?
So the question to me is the timeline that you laid out, and I heard occupancy of the building by fall of 2023, and I'm not clear, when we've done design work before, why we are not going to be done with design for a good 18 months from here. So can you walk me through what that process takes like, and if there's any way to accelerate that?
So I'll answer the second part of the question first. We are working with the city-county joint planning committee to try to accelerate that. It's our understanding from conversation with this designers and others that the plan review process for Durham is about a year. And so, like I said, we've discussed with the county before, and we're going to continue those discussions so they understand the urgency of getting that through. And we're going to do our part in making sure that if they have comments to our design, that we're turning those back around in an appropriate time manner.
And then, when do you think in the process it would be helpful to have a meeting out at the Northern community, and that in the design phase that we go out there?
So as we move into design development phase, which would be closer to February, March of 2020, where we have elevations of the actual building where they can see what it would look like, that would be a good time to start having those discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we would also want to do groundbreakings and celebrations like that as well.
And then, I'm sorry, I noted then there that the DOT, that we believe all the lane changes and traffic work is the responsibility of the DOT, and we're counting on that going forward with that Hebron Road extension.
At this time, that's our position, and we will hold that position until we can no longer hold that position.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think this is a great moment to move forward. I do think we're going to need to spend some time in the Northern community to explain why why we're at the location that we're at. We held off on that while we were going through the due diligence as we needed to and should have. But I think there's going to be a need in the fall, prior to the design work, but in the fall to communicate both in person and through social media and through the various schools, some background on why we're at the particular location that we're at and why that is the location that allows us to move forward and to do this.
I definitely agree with the position. We had a forum before at the same location. I think once we do the same presentation with our joint meeting with county commissioners, we should be able to schedule a meeting probably at Northern again to have that conversation with parents.
I would go beyond Northern. I think we can hold it at Northern. But we also need to communicate, not just with a meeting, but through all the other mechanisms to the parents at Lucas and at Carrington, and because they're the ones that actually are going to see this. And so I think it's going to take a real communication push, not just a meeting, but through all the mechanisms we have to kind of get some information out there.
I agree.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor of the authorization, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
All right.
Okay, so our next item is our capacity optimization analysis, and Mr. Matthew Palmer is going to be presenting for us.
I think your mic's on.
Let's go ahead and do that more formally. Good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be here. And the presentation that we're sharing with you all this evening, I know you've had in advance an opportunity to review. Contextually, this emanates out of the May 2019 Joint Board of Education County Commissioner meeting. And at that meeting, it was explicitly asked that in sharing the long-range facility assessment that was conducted by Cummings, that we, as Durham Public Schools, evaluate what implications the construction of what we generally call elementary school Site C would have on overall facility utilization, enrollment, and capacities in Southern Durham. And again, contextually, that was south of 147, loosely defined. So a simple question begat a much larger exercise and exploration into the implications for Southern Durham. In doing so, we've conducted a thorough analysis, and we're going to walk you through that this evening. So within this presentation, we're going to be touching on 5 individual topics. We'll revisit the strategic plan, again, Priority 5, Goal C, which again references 100% adequate and appropriate classroom space for all of Durham Public School children. We'll then review how we optimize for an individual school, but pay attention to the broader system-wide implications for optimization in our 3rd segment, and then review what we believe is a comprehensive plan to address not only the K-3 class size mandate that is associated with House Bill 90, but also looking at, is it possible to have distributed pre-kindergarten course classrooms across Durham Public Schools for each of the 30 elementary schools? Bearing in mind, we must also balance with that the overutilization at 7 of our schools actively. And more broadly, if we were to add those pre-K classrooms, what will that do for our overall fabric of balancing student enrollment with the capacities of the schools? We'll then talk about next steps and implications and where we go from here. So once again, to revisit Goal 5C, by 2023, 100% of elementary schools within Durham Public Schools will have adequate, appropriate classroom space. To clarify, when we refer to adequate, appropriate classroom space, we have interpreted that to mean that each student within Durham Public Schools has a physical seat in a built school, not using temporary spaces or any other such accommodation. So to revisit again, when we talk about a planning process, it's the migration and accumulation of knowledge, establishing that, and migrating into acting on the issues that are associated with the challenges at hand. This year, we've referenced this in the strategic retreat as well, we're looking to address a total of 5 issues. As noted previously, the K-3 class size mandate with HB 90. In addition to that, the potential for pre-K distributed universally across the district, integrating new residential growth, promoting diversity within schools, and increasing our transportation efficiency. So those 5 objectives intersect in a plan such as this. We see those being acted upon through the long-range facility plan, which will be the migration from the long-range facility assessment into a plan itself, the capital improvement plan that would be associated with the long-range facility plan, and again, beginning to look at what assignment implications that would have beginning in the spring and into the summer of next year. Are there any questions so far as we're beginning this? Okay. So our previous presentation established the enrollment and demographic projections that had integrated community development data. This portion today is really about the programmatic needs, bearing in mind the safety and welfare of our students, looking particularly at number 5 here at the capacities of our schools, being mindful of efficiency and then coordination with our facilities themselves between any new facilities that may come online as well as existing facilities that we have. So again, today, this is step 1. In response to the Joint Board of Education County Commissioners meeting that was held in May of 2019, we have reviewed capacities in Southern Durham as well as Northern Durham and considered the implications for Site C and also looked to see what we can do with pre-kindergarten across the district. From here, we'll continue to be updating the enrollment forecast. Again, we use the 20th day student enrollment data for that. We also are about to receive an updated development data push from Durham City and County Planning that will give us a sense of any additional residential projects that have come online since their last update. So in looking at how to optimize a school capacity with the enrollment of students, we really have to kind of start with some definitions and make sure that we're all on the same page when we use language and words. So we've used an example here with Bethesda Elementary, which was constructed in 1981. Right. You'll see over the course of the previous almost 40 years, Bethesda has actually undergone 4 total expansions. In 1982, an outdoor unit was added to the campus. In 1989, a wing was added. In 2003, an additional wing was added. So overall, it has gone through a number of iterations in its growth as a facility. But the question remains, when we talk about its capacity, how do we define that? How do we measure that? So the word that I'll draw your eye to here is the term suitability. When Merriam-Webster defines capacity, the potential or suitability for holding, storing, or accommodating, the reason that we're focusing on 2 identically sized goldfish bowls is that the suitability of one goldfish bowl, the suitability of the goldfish bowl in relationship to the 2 populations of fish you see here is really relative to what fish are we talking about. As it relates to HB 90 and the classroom size mandate, the classroom may hold 18 kindergarten students, but it may not hold 18 first grade students. So we really have to think about the suitability and applicability of that for each individual grade level, especially with the legislation. So again, to reiterate, we've reviewed this before, but to make sure that we're all on the same page, HB 90 requires that for kindergarten, there is a 1 teacher per 18 student ratio. For first grade, it's 1 teacher per 16 students. For second grade, 1 teacher per 17 students, and third grade, 1 teacher per 17 students again. Now, it does allow for one individual classroom to add on an additional 3 students per classroom, so long as the overall district average averages out to these ratios by grade. And that's critical. That's when we get to that system-wide utilization. So one school might be maxing out its grade levels, but each of those classrooms that's over the average has to be matched with another classroom that's under in order for the entire system to work. So before HB 90's passage, we could simply assign a number of students per room, add up the number of rooms by each grade, add up all of the rooms across the grade levels, and that would give us our building capacity. And conventionally, that's how we've done it. Moving forward, and especially with the full enactment of the legislation in 21-22, we need to program accordingly by grade level with, again, we have some flexibility for an individual classroom that's over this average, so long as we match it with an additional classroom that's under. So when we talk about designating the capacity for a classroom, and again, that's our smallest unit of analysis. We're starting with the classroom and scaling up from there to the school and then to the school system. We assign a teacher and students to a given space, align the corresponding state teacher-student ratios by grade level, and whenever possible, maximize those ratios to the allowable limits. Then we calibrate that for the entire facility so that we have a sense of what is the overall number of students that we can fit in alignment with the legislation. So with Bethesda, we see that before the passage of HB 90, the capacity that we have identified and the capacity that we've given to the Durham City County Planning Department for their calculations on growth management specifically, we had 712 students, but the development max capacity for Bethesda would actually be 110% times 712. So the overall capacity that we would reference in conversations in the planning realm would actually be 783. Does everyone follow with those threads and the math associated with that? Now, bearing in mind, and again, this is a revisitation of some of the growth management policies we have in the Durham Comprehensive Plan, it's not until district-wide we hit 110% until there's any restrictions on growth. So that means, in effect, homes are being approved using the 110% times the capacity that we've given them before the legislation was enacted. You can see the sort of conflict that's going to emerge with that. And we're, I think, across the board aware of some of the overcrowding issues. So after the adoption of the legislation, to accommodate the same number of students, we would actually need to add 5 classrooms and grow the capacity of Bethesda to 820 students. In order to do that, we would really need to be mindful of the core capacity. How many students can the cafeteria at Bethesda service? It is not 820. Going by the DPI benchmark of 14 students per square foot, we would measure the overall square footage of the cafeteria, which is 2,382 square feet, divide that by the 14 square feet per child, and have 170 students per lunch period. Now, conventionally, we say there's 3 lunch periods, so you multiply that by 3 to get your total capacity. The key...
Sorry, just go back 2 slides.
Please.
Where did that 820 come from?
Great question. It's going to take a second to explain. Let's go through this. So what we've done is use the projected enrollment that you see in column 2, right, by grade. And then the overall capacity is the multiplier of the number of classrooms times the maximum capacity allowable by the 21-22 legislation. So we've added the 3 on top of the benchmarks, right? So the capacities you see there are effectively number of classrooms times the 21-22 max, right? That would be effectively worst case scenario if we were maxing out this school. And we would need a comparable school to average it out at the district level. But for the purposes of this exercise, the 820 would be the number of classrooms we needed to accommodate each individual student. And I'll draw your eye to the far right. The student to instructor ratios are the highest ratios we could get given the overall projected enrollment. So students don't come into a school by cohort neatly bundled into appropriate and easy to optimize grade levels. So we have to, so for example, if we were in 4th grade to drop that from 5 classrooms to 4, our student to instructor ratio would skyrocket to 30 students, right? and across the board. So we've optimized each individual school with the projected enrollment across the board to get a sense of what we would need from a facilities perspective to accommodate that number of students. So when we roll this up into a larger district level perspective, you'll see in this instance, we need 5 classrooms. The total number of classrooms we need is 60. We'll get to that and how we get there. Steve, does that answer your question?
Yeah. All right, so just to kind of
Yeah.
just to make sure that I understand, because I know Bettina was in the advanced group and she gets this, but, so kindergarten, we're saying we're projecting 128 students.
Correct.
And that's this year?
That's for the year 21, 22. So we use the projections for the full implementation year.
And then we're saying, given the student ratio caps set by the legislature, to have 128 students, we need 7 classrooms.
That's right.
Even though that leaves a surplus of, it looks like 19
That's right.
students. Okay, so the 820 is really just a number to try to capture in one number the number of classrooms.
Yes.
Because it's more complicated now than it used to be to come up with it.
It is a tri-level optimization.
Because we're not actually saying that, I guess what we're saying is that we could get, if we had those 5 classrooms, we could get 820 students into those classrooms. But then, of course, they wouldn't, if we had 820 kids, they wouldn't match those numbers, and so we're all off again anyway.
That's right. That's right. So in a vacuum of real students and differentiations between year-by-year cohorts, right? In a perfect vacuum, we could hit 820 students at this school if we had.
If they all came in right at the
Precisely.
appropriate class.
Precisely.
And
So-
even if they did that, the next year we'd be off because the numbers are off.
That's right.
Okay, so basically it's just a ballpark that allows us to talk in some kind of way.
We might
about-
call it a simulated scenario. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
All right, thank you. I
And
get it.
In this simulated scenario, we're doing 2 pre-K classrooms at each elementary school as part of the simulation, or?
That's a very good question. So the answer to that is yes. Yep. So we have in council with, really from our executive leadership across the board, looked at what it would take to have pre-K kindergarten at each of our 30 elementary schools. And with a recognition, I might add, that having a singular isolated pre-kindergarten classroom by itself, in and of itself, is not necessarily the most advised practice. So, we've identified between 2 and 3 pre-kindergarten classrooms by school across the district, and then optimized using that as our platform. So in the context of core capacities, it's important to recognize that it might feel intuitive to say, well, Bethesda needs 5 more classrooms, let's just build 5 more classrooms. And I think what's imperative for the board to really understand is that simple addition exercise that maybe we could have done in the past, we really need to think strongly about. A facility like Bethesda is already over capacity in its food service realm by 200 students. Adding an additional 100 students to that is not going to ameliorate what is already a conflict with scheduling, logistics, and supplies. So we wanted to highlight that, the answers to the riddle are nonlinear. We need to think more deeply about what's possible. So moving forward, what we would advise in this scenario is a recalibration of the Bethesda enrollment zone to accommodate. You can see here we've used a different simulated scenario of 95 students per grade level. Again, with the full recognition that it's not so simple as to just cap it at one number like that. You can see here now we have 36 classrooms that are accommodating the 36 classrooms that are built. We don't need to add 5 classrooms in this scenario. So we've done that for each of the 30 elementary schools. We've taken the factors that you see on the left here, considering HB 90's class size implications. We've given ourselves the flexibility to be as, really what I would say is, proactive as possible, recognizing that our max capacity can be 3 beyond the mandated average. We've looked across the district to integrate pre-K, a minimum of 2 pre-K classrooms at each facility. And we've also been mindful of our core capacity limits when we look to add on to facilities. So the district optimization challenge really is about getting to a district level teacher to student ratio that is acceptable, because not only can no one classroom deviate beyond the 3 max over its average, the overall district has to average out within the acceptable thresholds. There are not only issues associated with that, but some constraints. So presently, if we were to use our current classroom configuration moving forward, we would be in non-compliance at grades 1, 2, and 3. We also are presently challenged with many schools that are overutilized and a few that are underutilized. Again, we're trying to get pre-K at every elementary, and as you're aware, having EC separate classrooms available distributively and regionally across the district would be helpful to make sure that we have regional coverage. And in addition, we're already seeing instances at our schools where we're lacking art and music spaces that have been converted into classrooms. In order to, again, the solutions that we have available to us, we have to be mindful of those ratios at the grade, school, and district levels. The core capacities at our facilities are limiting, and our students in our schools are distributed unevenly from a geographic perspective, right? It is not again, the vacuum concept is important. We can't pick a school up and move it near a clustering of kids. So when I reference the non-compliance presently, if we were to roll forward with our classroom configuration as it is right now and apply it to the projections for the year 21-22, we would see that we are non-compliant on our district averages at first, second, and third grade, right? In addition to that, we're presently servicing 20 elementary schools with pre-kindergarten options, and we have 56 total classrooms. In addition to that, we're overutilization at 7 of our schools that I'm sure you're very familiar with respect to the space challenges that persist at those schools. I referenced the uneven distribution of geography within the district. For example, when we look at a school like Parkwood that is presently at 95% utilization, the intuition within all of us would look at a map that's like this, that sees green, and say, well, we'll relieve Creekside and Hope Valley and Forest View by, redistributing students to Parkwood. But the reality is that Parkwood's at capacity presently as it is. So that, the recalibration that might be shared as far as a solution is not so simple. And that spreads really throughout southwestern into southeastern Durham, through Bethesda and Spring Valley. What I want to draw your eye to here is not a specific number, but I want to highlight that the red bars that you see here, those are our schools that need added classroom space, right? Those are schools that need more classrooms. What you will also pick out of that is that those are schools that don't have additional core capacity. In fact, they're already over their core capacities to accommodate the students that they presently have. So were we to add in additional classrooms to those facilities, they don't have the core space to service more students. So in looking at this challenge that we have before us, we're in non-compliance of HB 90 as present. We have pre-K at 20 of our 30 schools, so about 2/3 of our schools have pre-K, but 1/3 don't. And we're overutilized at a number of facilities. We do have the analysis we're sharing tonight to suggest that in the context of not only Site C, but also Site F, which is at the intersection of MLK and Roxborough, we need 2 elementary schools, a total of 60 classrooms at those locations in order to not only be in compliance with HB 90, but also achieve the objective of a distributed pre-K across the district, all 30 elementary schools. Again, this would bring all of our schools within our utilization target range of 85 to 95%, achieve the objective of having pre-kindergarten at each of the 30 elementaries, and have us in compliance at a classroom, grade, and systems level with the House Bill 90. Again, to achieve that, we would need 2 facilities, Site and F, in order to do so.
And that is by 21-22.
Correct. Wanted to walk you through this regionally and see how this would affect, each individual school, recognizing that the initial request was, if we were to add Site C online, what would it do for Southern Durham? In performing that analysis, what we're bringing to you is, it's not only Site C that we really need to be looking at actively, it's Site F. And both are critical in order to achieve our objectives. In Northern Durham, we need a total of 11 classrooms, right? Now, this shows a recalibration, sort of an optimization scenario. Again, there are some assumptions here. One of them is the enrollment projections for K-5 in 21-22. We're seeing within this school year a significant amount of growth across the district. That will adjust those enrollment projections. We're not in a position yet to adjust them. We're working on that actively. In addition, with the continued interest in development in Durham, when we get that data push from the planning department with new development, that's going to adjust our projections as well. So it's important to recognize these are very conservative estimates when we say we need 60 classrooms, okay? This scenario would, again, offer pre-kindergarten at a minimum of 2 at each of our Northern Durham schools. It would also add in exceptional children separate classroom space at each of our facilities. From an individual school perspective, Clubb, Easley, Glenn, Mangum, Merrickmore, and Poe would receive pre-K options. And in addition, we would increase the service provided presently at Hillendale. In the Southern Durham example, again, 2 or more pre-K classrooms by facility. Exceptional children, separate classrooms increase there as well. It would bring pre-K to Bethesda, Creekside, Forest View, and Hope Valley, and increase our presence at Burton, Parkwood, and Southwest. So across the board, we are trying to hit that benchmark of being in compliance of the state regulation, being in compliance of that 85 to 90% utilization threshold, and also offering pre-kindergarten across the district.
Can I ask a question, please? If we go back to the Northern Durham scenario. All right, so we have a couple of magnets up there, right? If we were to demagnetize, say, Sandy Ridge, now, I don't know what the capacity is, the actual capacity is for Sandy Ridge, but it's a magnet school, so there's a certain number of seats, right? And we kind of had a discussion about if magnet schools should take more or less or whatever. If we demagnetize the magnet school and then it, districting of it, would that be considered more classrooms or, like how, I don't know if that was included in a thought or, but it would probably be more of a capacity, more capacity being taken there or even part of the map being rearranged.
One of the things that's helpful with the regional totals that you see here on the bottom is that if Sandy Ridge and Eno Valley were, for example, if we were to demagnetize Sandy Ridge, which sits presently within the Eno Valley enrollment boundary,
Right.
it wouldn't necessarily change the numbers for this analysis.
Okay.
This is much more of a bulk analysis by classroom. Now, if we layer on in the demagnetization process a change in programmatic offering or class size requirements associated with that program, then we would be changing the capacities of the school. But for the present, for this exercise, to answer your question, any demagnetization in Northern or Southern Durham would not affect this analysis in the capacity sense. It may have impacted on the enrollment sense, and that's something to be sensitive to for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
So we brought all this together in a summary table for you here. Again, this is just about the 30 elementary schools that we have in Durham Public Schools. In this exercise, in this option that we have before us, the pre-K offerings have grown by 29 classrooms, which is an overall growth of 50% in our pre-K presence in Durham. In addition, we've grown our separate classrooms for exceptional children by 10. So we've grown in both exceptional children offerings as well as pre-kindergarten offerings, and we've balanced utilization across. Again, I would emphasize heavily that this is a tri-level on optimization at the classroom, school, and systems level that frankly we have not seen another school district undertake, but it's through your all instruction and direction that we've done so. So, once again, this is just a summary. You've read this and you can see the takeaway points here. One of the key things, this fourth bullet, that I want to emphasize is that efforts to address overutilization are not simple. And the quote that I shared in the strategic retreat, that one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to oversimplify a complex problem. Cannot do that here. The intent to add either mobile classrooms or additional built classrooms onto a school where we need it is not going to work in this situation. So the other consideration we must make is that at our other schools that maybe do have some core capacity space, bear in mind, a lot of those schools are historic schools that in many instances don't have a queue storage area for passenger vehicles. So if you increase the school from 250 to 500, because it might have a larger cafeteria, we may not have the transportation space to accommodate the additional parents or students. So follow that through and recognize that there's broad implications when we increase core capacity, when we increase classrooms at a facility. It has profound effect across the board operationally. So to get there, we do have some resources in our hands. We own presently Site C in southern Durham as well as Site F. In addition, Site A. Now, Site C is a total of 49 acres, Site F is 33 acres, and Site A is 56 acres. So these are three resources that we have in hand. We've run through the costing analysis. Again, this is in the assessment that was shared previously in May. Site C, we project to be 37 million. Site F would be 49 million. And then we have actually individually added up the cost to get our pre-K program up and running in that growth of 50%, which is approximately $990,000. Any questions on this slide?
No, but we'll still own the northern site, right?
Correct.
We still own the northern site even when the new building is built, right? Okay.
So where we go from here in the planning process, as I mentioned, we're looking at the migration from the long-range facility assessment into the plan this fall. That will lead into the capital improvement plan, which itself is set up for the voter bond referendum in 2020. That will allow us to undertake student assignment planning, knowing which facilities will be available to us and which will not. Any questions on the process or the information that we've shared thus far?
It's going to be a 2020 bond? Yeah. Okay, we'll claim it. All right, okay.
I mean,
yeah.
I think this presentation is so helpful because you show the complexity, but you also show the need that is past urgent for not one elementary school, but two. You correct some misconceptions and misinformation in the community and within some of our elected friends about some myth of extra capacity that we have somewhere within Durham. And I appreciate that you've said that the need for these two schools is urgent and it's conservative because we may need 3 or 4 if the General Assembly kind of comes back into whack and puts some accountability in and closes some charter schools in our community. So I just look forward to this conversation perhaps next week with the county commissioners.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And highlighting the need for that and maybe letting our community know that they can be in that public space because they are feeling this crowding classrooms right now.
I say this in jest, except it's serious. Like that map, you need to add flames to the red parts, or I think the fish bowls would even be better. Like that's what our students are experiencing. Let's put those fish bowls on there, and that's what our county feels like.
This is what happens when you wait, right? All right. If we would have been allowed to do the elementary school C, right, we'd be talking about one school now, right, for additional capacity. So now it's a different conversation. So I really appreciate this. I cannot wait for our meeting next week because we need to go this in this amount of detail next week with the county commissioners because, again, like Natalie said, we're in an urgent situation with this capacity, and there are some commissioners who do question our calculations for capacity. So leveling the field about what capacity means is going to be very important in our conversation next week, and I do look forward to that.
And we have the time to do a bond, right? I mean, you were asking whether there could be one. There very much can be a bond in 2020 in this community. There's plenty of time, there's plenty of need, and we can demonstrate it.
Has the agenda been made, set for the meeting? Anything on it other than this?
That was actually going to be my question.
Because
we need to give it the time.
prior, in the year that Steve and I were just coming onto the board, that was a bond as a part of that vote as well, so we didn't have any input into that. But Durham does deja vu very well, and it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible. So the clarity of this presentation will help us in making our case, but this presentation includes the word bond. It includes pre-K. It includes some things that we would normally have as separate items. This is the agenda, in my opinion.
That's exactly.
Yeah, I leaned over to Bettina. I said, we need to clear the path. This is what needs to be talked about in our meeting next week. You know, it is set, you know, but we can definitely make those adjustments. We actually, Bettina's emailed earlier saying that the agenda that was proposed is good, but we can definitely make those adjustments. This needs to be number one, and then everything else can take a back seat if we have extra time. You know, I do agree with that.
I strongly believe that we gotta be really bold. 2022, that needs to be out of question. We have to get everyone involved in this process. I think at some point later on, probably in the next 2 weeks, we're gonna show you our enrollment is going up, and most of our classrooms are really full. And whatever excuses that we got before that we're declining, I think we're not gonna have it anymore. And the good faith that we have now that we're incorporating pre-K conversation in our projection, I think that's something that is going to be a win for our commissioners. So we got to be really bold to go for 2020. 2022 is going to be too late.
I want to thank y'all for taking such complex information and putting it in a simple format and including those numbers there, because we're getting really real about how much this costs. And I'm just reminded of the timeline for Northern. 2023 is when we're talking about those kids walking into a new building, but your projections of overcapacity were 2021, right? And so we have to do something urgently. Otherwise, I'm not sure where we start putting children in 2021, and our students deserve beautiful, wonderful space to learn and grow in. And so I think this feels urgent, and this presentation puts that urgency behind it. So thank you all for that.
Well, and I would just hope that even if we won't be at the 20th day enrollment numbers, we could at least share some draft information next week with the commissioners, because I think that will be a shared celebration that they need to embrace with us.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next item is the unbudgeted county appropriation for capital improvement and deferred maintenance projects. And I'm going to be joined at the table with Travis Anderson, our Executive Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services, and Thomas Griffiths, our Executive Director of Construction and Capital Planning. So the main points to take away from this presentation is that in May, Cummins did an update to both this board and the joint board with the county commissioners, and essentially what they said was that we have $521 million worth of deferred maintenance need. And the way that they demonstrated that was to spread it out over 10 years because it's actually due right now, okay? The current commitment that we've received from the county is $10 million, and that's over the next 3 years. During that same time period, Cummins indicates that we actually need about $228 million. So there's a $218 million deficit for deferred maintenance for schools that already are in existence. We have prepared for you, if you could hit that clicker for me, I don't have it. Thank you. Yep, that's the nice, let's go back. So this is, you can't read it, but it's in the report. This is a summary for each one of the schools and how much they are projecting that needs to be done at those schools and in which year it needs to occur. So that's what this, our recommendation is based off of. Here's a simple graph that shows you over that 10-year period. Cummins is the blue line on top. What we've been funded or committed to be funded from the county is on the bottom. It's that little orange line. As you can see, once it gets to that red line, it disappears and becomes zero. So past 2022, the unfunded CIP need is going to be $300 million. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Anderson, and he's going to walk through the major categories that we are asking for. Please note that at this time, we've only received the $3.655 million. As staff, we're saying there's some other emergent needs that need to be taken care of, and we are going to ask that they at least increase it for this year up to the $6.5 million. So Travis.
Thank you. So we're focusing our expenses on three major categories. Safety, we're focusing on those things that impact the students on a daily basis. Miscellaneous capital improvements, which are fairly broad, as well as HVAC needs for our existing infrastructure that's currently failing. So our safety focus will be on playground improvements. We have several playgrounds that need improvements today in order for the students to actively use them safely. Life safety system upgrades that are required throughout the district, as well as some parking lot improvements to help with our overall appearance, as well as some risk management issues that we've experienced. Miscellaneous capital improvements will include some money to do some investigation designs for future projects, as well as to support requests for instructional needs. As students are experiencing different program curriculums, we want to be able to support those needs to changes throughout the district. Inspection citations that we have at some schools that we need to address in order to meet those citation requirements, as well as some miscellaneous projects. And then some replacements for existing boilers, chillers, and some control upgrades that are needed to improve existing core instructional spaces. On the safety aspect, we have some radio communication devices that have to be addressed throughout the district in order to meet the current standards and current codes and to deal with some changes that are happening with 4G technology, essentially. So we have to do that in order to still be able to function in a modern society. We need about $25,000 to do that. Some playground improvements. Those are the schools that currently have issues that are impacting day-to-day safety for students. So we want to make sure we're able to address those improvements throughout the district, and it's a fairly district-wide approach to ensure all students are playing on a safe playground. Life safety upgrades are needed in order to meet current fire code standards and to make sure that all of our students are in a safe environment that has the proper fire system, and that's really what we're focusing on. Upgrading and replacing outdated fire systems so all students are safe throughout their buildings. Parking lot improvements, we're doing some major replacements as well as some minor repairs, and again, that's for some risk safety issues. And so that totals $3.655.
Just since you raised the alarm about fire, I assume they're functional today?
All are functional today. They are failing at times and require a lot of operational maintenance. Some of them are outdated and we need to adjust to meet current fire code, but at this point we are meeting standards. The fire marshal has given us deadlines to improve certain schools. We don't have a choice but to improve Jordan within a year or we won't be able to meet the standards. So the fire marshal has been very clear that we have a year to improve Jordan. And then there are other things that we have to do in order to accommodate for the expanse and growth of a school. So as they are doing different things in the building, as we're adding CTE programs, those require different fire code systems. In order to add those programs safely, we have to adjust our programming. For miscellaneous capital improvements, we're going to do some structural design investigation at various schools to address existing needs. To support instruction, this is again based upon the school's request, so we want a pocket of money to be able to address those things. There are a number of schools that have already requested changes. I visited CMA just today. They have a request, and so this is really to help support what they're trying to do with their students. We have a couple of schools with some citations that need to be addressed, which we have timelines attached to those as well to avoid fines. And then some miscellaneous capital improvements are very small things that we need to do at various schools, and then some larger projects as well. Flooring replacements that are creating trip hazards and things like that, schools that have significant wall and painting issues that need to be addressed, as well as some structural repairs that we need to address district-wide. So that totals about 1.6.
That's a clarifying question. Structural investigations and designs. Can you give me like an example of what that has looked like?
Sure. So I will let Thomas speak to that. But I can tell you a little bit about Riverside, for example. Riverside, the gym floor is sinking, right? And so we need to do some engineering investigation to figure out why it's sinking and then what needs to happen in order to repair that. And Thomas can speak to the other things we're investigating.
It's a 10.5-foot rim to try to dunk. It's really.
We have several schools with cracks, and we think it's due to settling. As you know, the age of most of our schools is about 47 years. So that comes with the age, but we just want to investigate to make sure that is the case and it's not any real structural issues that we need to take care of.
Welcome.
Comes with age, yeah.
And then our HVAC projects. So we have 3 schools, 3 elementary schools, that we're looking to do some replacements of their existing systems and core spaces, core academic spaces. That's Burton, Fayetteville Street, and Parkwood. Those 3 elementary schools, which we know elementary schools are smallest schools, they represent right now 8.6% of all of our HVAC work orders. That's a lot. So we need to reduce that. That means that those students are experiencing hot days, and these are our youngest students. That equates to $15,983 in materials and parts, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have a small budget, that's a lot of money. And so it impacts our operational costs. And then our labor is listed there. And you can see how it compares to the average DPS school, which includes a high school, which is much larger. They are still much higher. Most schools are less than 2% of our total work orders, and they're averaging 2.86%. So it's taking a lot of man hours and a lot of money to maintain these outdated systems. And again, every time it goes down, that means that we have students in core academic spaces that are not having a cooled space. So we're looking to replace chiller systems, boiler systems, and upgrade the controls at Burton, Fayetteville Street, and Parkwood.
And that's only 15,000?
So we're not doing total systems.
Okay, all right.
Right, so the 15,000 is what we currently spend on operational costs to support it. It's 1.2 to replace, right? We can't do that for 15,000. No.
There's some used equipment or something. I don't know what. Some Roscoe's chillers and AC. I don't know what that is.
But we're still not doing whole system replacements, just the key components, boilers, chillers, and control systems.
Okay, so there's no individual questions about what Mr. Anderson and Mr. Griffiths presented. Our recommendations are to approve the list as attached. But additionally, we also would ask authorization to request that the county increase the amount from the 3.655 for this year to 6.55, so that we can definitely address those HVAC issues that we outlined.
So I guess I'm confused. I thought when we passed the budget that the county authorized something more along the lines of $5 million in capital.
So that's we get annually 1.6, $1.7 million. So that's aside from that. This unbudgeted amount is what they've asked the board to say, what are your priorities? And then once you tell us what the priorities are, we will release that funding. So they've allocated 3.655, but they have not allowed us to expend that until the board says that these are the priorities that they want to address with that 3.655. We're saying in addition to that, we need more money because we have even more needs than the 3.655 in a fiscal year. And so we want to go up to 6.5. That would be in addition to the 1.7 that we are using to address all the things that we've been working on this summer. And as Mr. Anderson said, that goes like that. We had several emergencies. We went over the budget today. We've already spent over $500,000, and we are, 3 weeks into school on just addressing gas line breaks, water main breaks. These are all emergencies that if we were replacing our systems in a timely manner, You wouldn't have to pay that additional emergency cost while kids are in school. So we need the money, and we need it now.
So are we, I guess my question is, based on what I thought the agreement was in the spring, is this something that we need to make into a major issue, or is this something that we simply need to take to the county and we expect the county to approve and support this? I'm trying to figure out how hard Mike has to work here in the next couple of weeks.
So we believe it's major. Like, I would like to have all 10 now.
No, I know. I know
But,
on our end, we know it's major.
yeah.
I guess the question is maybe for Dr. Mubanga as to what extent we think we need to really kind of
And
make
what
this an issue, or what?
And what are the staff conversations that have been happening? I'm hearing there may be staff conversations happening between the two bodies, right?
They are. The county's position is they want to, the way that they want to fund these projects, they don't want to borrow, however they're going to fund any more than what we would expend in a fiscal year. The issue with that is that construction doesn't work that way, right? And so we have to have money to encumber so that I can contract with the contractor, and then as they complete the work, we expend the funds. And we wouldn't expend the funds until the work was complete. So for example, if the Northern is a great example of that, right? Or Elementary C, that's what they ask you about all the time, Elementary C. We are not going to give a contract at $37 million and then say, check back in with us 2 years later, right? As they complete work, we'll go out and check that work. We'll pay them for the work that's been done. That's just how it works. The county doesn't want to work like that. They only want to give us what is going to be expended during that year. But the board can't contract just for what's going to be expended during that year.
All right. Just want to clarify. Initially, we used to get $1.6 million. I think when we went back to commissioners, when we put our request, they were able to add a good $4 million. And then the commitment was for the next 3 years. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they should be able to secure that additional $4 million. So that's where we are. If we take $1.6 million that we're getting, then you add that $4 million, I think, that's get us to 5 million point something. So that was the commitment that the county, when we presented our budget. I think what I'm hearing here, that's what we had discussion. It would be better if we can get this money up front. So because of the needs that we have and the costs, that if we prolong waiting till next year, it may be even more. So it's just a matter of us. Do we need to be bold to go really present our needs at this point if we need more, or do we need to stick with what they've been able to promise us? So that's what we really need to seek, the pleasure of the board. If we want to stick with what they've promised to us, we're looking pretty much somewhere around $5 million that we have to work with.
Well, they said they have it. They have 10, so we know they have it to share. So I don't see why, if we know how urgent these projects are and they involve major safety issues, that we wouldn't go as boldly as possible and continue to chip away at this work. I mean, we are just running up the cost of it if we don't. And I think we could demonstrate 3 times this list, I mean, today, right? I mean, so I look forward to asking them for this and letting them plan towards the next budget cycle of upping what they promised. I mean, that's how they take care of their facilities, and that's what we need for our students, so.
So the administration is seeking board approval for this direction?
That's correct.
Are these 3 different motions?
I think it's simply a vote of confidence. I think this is not a contractual action item, right? So if we have majority support, I think they're going to head in that direction.
Yeah, let's vote on it for legal sake.
Will this part also be a part of the presentation for the county commission? Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to move approval of the proposed capital improvement projects as listed, as well as authorizing the staff to request Durham County to increase the current unbudgeted appropriation from 3.655 to 6.5, and as well as approving the miscellaneous capital improvement as listed as well.
Second.
Strong motion from Mr. Kasem and a double second from Ms. Umstead and Ms. Byer. I have an unhelpful piece of discussion for this, but I think it's probably for 5 boards into the future, but I can't help think about the marriage of our last 2 presentations and what it means to have an aging 53 school now and 55, 56 school system in the future, to watch HVAC things and think we have 53 HVACs and 53 gym floors that might be sagging or cracking, and to know that Cabarrus serves the same number of kids with 39 schools, and to drive by the beautiful new library today and see all the prosperity in Durham. I don't think it's for this board to even really start that work, but what are the efficiencies to be gained if we think about those the right word, efficient school sizes, right? Middle school is at 800. I don't know the exact, I know that one. And that efficiency is not just in the capital, it's also in the personnel piece and what the state gives us in terms of assistant principals and things like that. So when you run these small schools, we know they're not as efficient. So I don't know how we even take the first step, but it wouldn't be hard to dream that in 2040, we've got a more modern-looking school system for this modern, emerging city. And I think we just have to say that and dream that at some point. So thanks for bearing with me.
We could tell Bettina when she's on the board then to make that motion.
I do think that's important, Matt, and I think sometimes showing pictures of what Wake County is building, like showing images of facilities that are state-of-the-art, and how some communities are choosing to knock down what we have kind of Band-Aided together, I think we'll start that conversation, and I think it's a really important one to continue.
Any further discussion on this motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is approved unanimously. Thank you, staff. Item 9, summary of follow-up items.
Okay, so there wasn't a lot of follow-up items. The night academic services presented on the accountability. You asked for a different way to show the chart. We've already answered that Zello is spelled with an X and not a Z, so that's taken care of. We are going to schedule a time to meet with the Northern High School community and work with Dr. Mubanga to do that. There was also a lot of thanks for the presentation of academic services and the transparency that they're providing in that presentation. The capacity optimization portion of tonight, as well as the unbudgeted, will be on the agenda for the joint meeting on next week. That's it.
We have one community member to follow up with. Who made public comment?
While we were here, we actually did have Ms. Watson and 2 of our EC directors meet with that family.
Wonderful. Okay. Mr. Lee, point of privilege.
Yes. And so when you start listing people that you want to celebrate for District 3, you're clearly going to miss some, and I do apologize. But I did want to give a thank you to Jeremy Tucker and, of course, Dr. Pittman, who was integral in getting the students and the entertainment and the different art and everything like that there. So I want to definitely thank them as well. So thank you, Dr. Pittman and Jeremy Tucker. Thank you. I'll make a motion to go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Moved by Mr. Lee, second by Ms. Umstead, that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. Item 10, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are in closed session. Thank you, everyone.
half hour.
We are now back in open session.
Board members, I'm here to seek your approval for the personnel report as discussed in the closed session.
Personnel report dated September 12th, 2019.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the personnel report dated September.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously.